The Sullivan children disappearance. The summer of 1966 was a golden haze in Crescent Bay, a sleepy coastal town nestled along the rugged shores of Northern California. It was a time when innocence still lingered, when children roamed freely under the sun, their laughter mingling with the crash of waves and the calls of gulls. Crescent Bay, with its sandy beaches and pastel-painted boardwalk, was the kind of place where families felt safe, where doors were left unlocked and kids pedaled their bikes until dusk. But beneath this idyllic surface, something sinister was brewing, a darkness that would soon shatter the town's tranquility and leave a scar that would never heal. On July 4, 1966, three siblings, Jane Marie Sullivan, aged 9, Anna Rose Sullivan, aged 7, and little Grant Thomas Sullivan, aged 4, vanished from Crescent Beach without a trace, their disappearance casting a shadow that would stretch across decades and continents, whispering of connections to the most depraved minds of America's criminal underbelly. The Sullivan family was the epitome of the American dream. James Jim Sullivan, a former Navy man turned taxi driver, was a broad-shouldered, soft-spoken father who worked long hours to provide for his wife, Nancy, and their three children. Nancy, a homemaker with a gentle smile and a knack for baking, was the heart of their modest home at 214 Seaview Lane, a white clapboard house just a mile from Crescent Beach. The children were their pride and joy. Jane, the eldest, was a bright, responsible girl with chestnut curls and a shy demeanor, often seen shepherding her younger siblings with a protective air. Anna, with her freckled cheeks and mischievous grin, was the spirited middle child, always ready with a quip or a playful taunt. Grant, the baby of the family, was a cherubic 4-year-old with wide blue eyes and a habit of clinging to Jane's hand wherever they went. They were inseparable, a trio bound by love and the carefree joy of childhood. The Sullivans were well liked in Crescent Bay, their lives woven into the fabric of a community that believed nothing truly bad could happen in their sunlit haven. But July 4, 1966, was no ordinary day. It was Independence Day, a sweltering celebration of patriotism and freedom, with Crescent Beach teeming with families, picnickers, and tourists. The boardwalk buzzed with the scent of cotton candy and the clatter of carnival games, while fireworks promised to light up the night sky. The Sullivan children, eager to join the festivities, begged to visit the beach. Nancy, trusting Jane's maturity and the safety of their small town, gave them a handful of coins for ice cream and bus fare, waving them off as they boarded the 10 a.m. bus from Seaview Lane to the beach, just a 5-minute ride away. Jim was away on a 3-day trip to San Francisco, drumming up business as a traveling salesman. The children promised to be back by 2 p.m., their laughter echoing as they disappeared down the street. Nancy watched them go, a faint unease tugging at her heart, though she brushed it off as a mother's worry. She could never have imagined that those fleeting moments would be the last time she'd see her children alive. As the hours ticked by and the children failed to return, a creeping dread began to coil around Crescent Bay. By evening, when Jim rushed home from San Francisco to join the frantic search, the town was gripped by a collective terror. The Sullivan children had vanished, leaving behind no trace, no shoes, no towels, no sign of struggle. Only whispers of a stranger lingered, a tall man seen with the children on the beach, his presence as fleeting and elusive as a shadow in a storm. Witnesses described him as a lean figure in his mid-30s, with fair hair and a suntanned face that seemed both ordinary and unsettlingly intense. He was seen playing with the children near the water's edge, tossing a beach ball with an ease that suggested familiarity. To the onlookers, it seemed innocent, a kind stranger entertaining kids on a holiday. But to those who knew Jane's cautious nature, the sight was chilling. She was shy, protective, unlikely to trust a stranger so readily. Had they met this man before? Had he woven himself into their lives, a predator cloaked in charm? The disappearance of the Sullivan children sent shockwaves far beyond Crescent Bay, drawing parallels to a disturbing pattern emerging across the United States in the 1960s, a decade when the specter of serial killers began to haunt the national psyche. The case bore eerie similarities to other unsolved abductions, from the Midwest to the Pacific Northwest, where children vanished from public places, often in broad daylight, leaving behind baffled families and cryptic clues. In 1965, two young girls had disappeared from a county fair in Iowa, their bodies later found in a remote wooded area, the work of an unknown killer who seemed to vanish into thin air. In 1968, a boy and his sister went missing from a Seattle park, last seen with a man matching a similar description, tall, fair-haired, unassuming yet magnetic. These cases, like the Sullivans, hinted at a predator who thrived on opportunity, targeting children in moments of unguarded joy. The FBI, still in its early days of profiling serial offenders, began to see a chilling archetype, a methodical, charismatic individual who could blend into crowds, gain trust, and strike with surgical precision. What drove such a monster to target the Sullivan children? The motives behind child abductions in this era were as varied as they were horrifying. Some killers, like the infamous John Wayne Gacy, who would later terrorize Chicago in the 1970s, were driven by perverse sexual impulses, their crimes marked by sadistic rituals. Others, like the still unidentified Zodiac killer, active in Northern California around the same time, seemed motivated by a need for control, fame, or a twisted sense of destiny. The Sullivan case, however, suggested a different kind of predator, one who operated with chilling spontaneity, seizing the chaos of a holiday crowd to enact a plan that left no trace. Was it random violence, a spur-of-the-moment act by an opportunist who saw three vulnerable children and acted on impulse? Or was it something more calculated, a predator who had watched the Sullivans before, perhaps grooming Jane with small kindnesses on prior beach visits, as Anna had once teased her sister about having a boyfriend at the beach? The thought was nauseating, a betrayal of trust that turned innocence into a weapon. The 1960s were a turning point in America's understanding of such crimes. The Sullivan disappearance, much like the Beaumont case in Australia, marked a cultural shift, shattering the illusion of safety in public spaces. Parents began to clutch their children closer, wary of strangers who might lurk behind a friendly smile. The case also sparked speculation about international connections, as Australian authorities noted similarities between the Sullivan abduction and the 1966 disappearance of the Beaumont children from Glenelg Beach, Adelaide. Both cases involved three siblings vanishing from a beach on a national holiday. Both featured a tall, fair-haired man seen with the children, and both left investigators grasping at shadows. Some theorized a single predator could have traveled between continents, exploiting the era's lax border controls and limited communication between international law enforcement. Others whispered of a network, a cabal of deviants sharing methods and motives across oceans, though such claims veered into the realm of conspiracy. The truth remained elusive, a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit. The Sullivan children's disappearance was not just a tragedy. It was a wound that festered in the American consciousness, a reminder that evil could wear a human face and strike in the brightest of places. Jane, Anna, and Grant were more than names on a missing persons poster. They were a sister who read bedtime stories, a girl who dreamed of being a dancer, a boy who loved chasing seagulls. Their absence left a void that grew with each passing year, as their parents clung to fading hope and a nation grappled with the dawning realization that monsters walked among them. Who was the man on the beach? Was he a lone wolf, a drifter passing through Crescent Bay, or a local hiding in plain sight? And why did he choose the Sullivans, three children whose only crime was trusting in the safety of a summer day? The answers, if they exist, remain buried in the sands of Crescent Beach, waiting to be unearthed by a truth that has yet to surface. The sun hung high over Crescent Beach on July 4th, 1966, its rays glinting off the Pacific like 1,000 shattered mirrors, each shard reflecting the careless joy of a holiday in full swing. Crescent Bay, California, pulsed with life. Children darted through the surf, their laughter a melody against the rhythmic crash of waves, while the boardwalk thrummed with the clink of coins and the sugary scent of caramel apples. Amid this vibrant chaos, Jane Sullivan, 9, Anna Sullivan, 7, and little Grant Sullivan, 4, stepped off the morning bus, their bare feet kicking up warm sand as they joined the throng. Jane clutched a crumpled dollar bill for ice cream, her hazel eyes scanning the crowd with a big sister's vigilance. Anna, her auburn pigtails bouncing, tugged Grant's tiny hand, giggling about the fireworks they'd see that night. It was a scene of pure, sun-soaked innocence, the kind that made Crescent Bay feel like a postcard come to life. But by noon, that postcard would be torn apart, its edges frayed by a mystery that would haunt the town for decades. The Sullivan children were last seen definitively at 11:15 a.m., near the water's edge, where the sand was firm and cool beneath their toes. A vendor, Marty Klein, a grizzled man with a sun-bleached beard, remembered selling them a single vanilla cone, which Jane carefully divided among her siblings. The older girl, she was real sweet, Marty later told police, his voice cracking. Paid me exact change. Made sure the little boy didn't drop his share. They were happy, you know. Just kids. Marty's stand, a rickety cart parked near the lifeguard tower, gave him a clear view of the beach, and he swore he saw the trio wander toward a cluster of driftwood logs, where they began tossing a red beach ball. That was the last untainted moment, a fleeting snapshot of joy before the tide of dread began to rise. By 11:45 a.m., witnesses began to notice something, or someone, unsettling. Clara Hensley, a 42-year-old schoolteacher, sunning herself on a checkered blanket, caught sight of a man lingering near the children. He was tall, lean, with a sun-kissed glow that made his fair hair shimmer like spun gold in the midday light. His eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, seemed to drink in the scene with an intensity that felt both magnetic and wrong. Claire described him as handsome in a sharp way, like a movie star who's seen too much. He wore a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and khaki shorts that hugged his frame, exuding a casual confidence that drew glances from passers-by. To Clara, he seemed out of place. Not a local, not a tourist, but something else, a predator cloaked in charm. She watched him kneel beside Jane, his smile wide and disarming, as he tossed the beach ball back to her. Anna laughed, clapping her hands, while Grant toddled closer, drawn to the stranger's easy charisma. Clara turned away for a moment, distracted by a friend's chatter, and when she looked back, the man and the children were still there, but something had shifted, a subtle tension, like a cloud passing over the sun. Other witnesses filled in fragments of the chilling tableau. Tommy Delgado, a teenage surfer waxing his board nearby, noticed the man's hands, long-fingered, almost elegant, but with a nervous energy as he gestured to the children. He was talking to them like he knew them, Tommy recalled, his voice tight with hindsight's regret. The older girl, she seemed careful, you know, like she wasn't sure about him, but the younger ones were all in, laughing like he was their best pal. Tommy saw the man point toward the boardwalk, as if suggesting they move that way, and the children followed, their small figures weaving through the crowd. The last he saw, they were near the edge of the beach, where the sand gave way to the weathered planks of the boardwalk, the man's hand resting lightly on Jane's shoulder. It was a gesture that seemed protective, almost tender, but it sent a shiver through Tommy's spine, though he couldn't say why. The boardwalk was a kaleidoscope of noise and color, carnival barkers shouting, children squealing, the distant thump of a band playing patriotic tunes. It was here, amid the chaos, that the Sullivan children seemed to dissolve into the air. A hot dog vendor, Rosa Martinez, claimed she saw them around noon, standing near a ring-toss booth, the man still with them. Rosa's memory was vivid, almost cinematic. The man bought each child a soda, his movements deliberate, his smile a perfect mask of kindness. He looked at them like they were his, Rosa whispered to investigators, her eyes haunted. The way he leaned down to the little boy, ruffling his hair, it was too familiar, too intimate. Rosa turned to serve a customer, and when she glanced back, they were gone, swallowed by the crowd. Her description of the man added a new layer of unease. He carried a small canvas bag, slung over one shoulder, its contents unknown but heavy enough to tug at the strap. What was in that bag? A change of clothes? A weapon? Or something far worse? Something that would explain why 3 children could vanish without a scream? The tension in Crescent Bay thickened as the afternoon wore on. By 2 p.m., when the children failed to board the bus home, Nancy Sullivan's unease turned to panic. She called the Crescent Bay Police Department, her voice trembling as she described her children's absence. Officer Daniel "Danny" Walsh, a rookie with a boyish face and a stubborn streak, was the first to respond. He arrived at the beach to find the holiday crowd still in full swing, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding. Danny canvassed the boardwalk, his notepad filling with half-remembered sightings and conflicting details. A retired fisherman swore he saw the children climb into a blue sedan parked near the pier, driven by a man with fair hair. A mother pushing a stroller claimed she saw them walking toward the dunes, the man trailing behind like a shadow. Each account was a thread in a tapestry of confusion, each witness certain of what they'd seen, yet none could agree on where the children went or when. The mysterious man became the focal point of the investigation, a phantom whose presence lingered like a ghost in every account. Witnesses described his voice as smooth, almost hypnotic, with a faint accent, Midwestern, perhaps, or something harder to place. He moved with a predator's grace, blending into the crowd, yet standing out to those who felt his gaze. One detail, buried in a lifeguard statement, sent chills through the investigators. The man had been seen on the beach days before alone, watching children play with an intensity that made the lifeguard's skin crawl. Was he stalking the Sullivans, waiting for the perfect moment? Or were they simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in the web of a drifter passing through? The questions piled up, each one a dagger in the hearts of Jim and Nancy Sullivan, who stood on the boardwalk as dusk fell, staring at the darkening sea, willing their children to reappear. The drama peaked as night descended, the fireworks bursting over Crescent Bay in a cruel mockery of celebration. Search parties fanned out across the beach, their flashlights cutting through the shadows, calling the children's names until their voices grew hoarse. The crowd thinned, leaving behind crumpled soda cans and abandoned beach towels, but no trace of Jane, Anna, or Grant. The police set up a command post near the lifeguard tower, radios crackling with updates that led nowhere. A tip came in at 9 p.m. A gas station attendant on Highway 1 reported seeing a man matching the description, driving a blue sedan with a child sandal on the passenger seat. Officers raced to the scene, hearts pounding, only to find the station empty, the attendant uncertain of the car's direction. The lead fizzled, like so many others, leaving the investigation teetering on the edge of despair. As the hours turned to days, the case took on a fevered intensity. Divers scoured the ocean floor, fearing the children had been swept away by a rogue current, but found nothing. Volunteers combed the dunes and nearby woods, their shouts echoing in the fog. The man's face, reconstructed from sketches based on witness accounts, stared out from every telephone pole and storefront, his features both ordinary and menacing, a paradox that fueled nightmares. Was he a local, hiding in plain sight, attending church or sipping coffee at the diner? Or was he a ghost, a transient killer who slipped through Crescent Bay like a wisp of smoke? The resolution, if it could be called that, came not in answers, but in the chilling realization that the children were gone, their fate sealed in a moment no one could pinpoint. The beach, once a place of joy, became a graveyard of hope, its sands whispering secrets that refused to surface. The Sullivan case gripped Crescent Bay with a primal fear, a reminder that evil could wear a handsome face and strike in the light of day. The mysterious man remained a specter, his identity as elusive as the tide, leaving behind a town forever changed and a nation riveted by a mystery that refused to let go. What happened to Jane, Anna, and Grant? Did they walk willingly with their captor, charmed by his honeyed words? Or was there a struggle, a silent scream lost in the holiday din? The answers, if they existed, were buried somewhere in the labyrinth of that fateful day, waiting for a truth that might never come. The night of July 4th, 1966, draped Crescent Bay in a suffocating cloak of dread, the fireworks' fleeting brilliance mocking the darkness that had swallowed Jane Sullivan, 9, Anna Sullivan, 7, and Grant Sullivan, 4. As the last embers faded over the Pacific, Crescent Beach transformed from a stage of celebration to a crime scene, its sands trampled by frantic volunteers and police officers, their flashlights slicing through the fog like desperate prayers. The Crescent Bay Police Department, a small outfit accustomed to petty thefts and lost tourists, was thrust into a nightmare that would test their resolve and haunt their dreams. The search for the Sullivan children became a fever crusade, a race against a ticking clock that seemed to mock every effort. Yet the man who had spirited them away, a tall, fair-haired phantom with a smile as sharp as a blade, slipped through the net, leaving behind a trail of whispers and a town teetering on the edge of hysteria. Officer Danny Walsh, the rookie with a boyish face and a stubborn heart, stood at the heart of the investigation, his uniform damp with sweat and sea mist. By 10 p.m., the beach was a hive of activity, cordoned off with yellow tape that fluttered in the salty breeze. Danny's radio crackled with updates, sightings, tips, fragments of hope that crumbled under scrutiny. The command post, a hastily erected tent near the lifeguard tower, buzzed with the voices of Chief Harold Grayson, a grizzled veteran with a voice like gravel, and a dozen other officers, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Volunteers from Crescent Bay's tight-knit community joined the effort, their shouts of Jane, Anna, Grant, echoing across the dunes, a chorus of desperation that grew hoarse as the hours bled into dawn. Nancy Sullivan, the children's mother, stood vigil at the tent's edge, her eyes hollow, clutching a photograph of her children, a snapshot of Jane's shy smile, Anna's freckled grin, and Grant's wide-eyed wonder. Jim Sullivan, their father, paced the boardwalk, his fists clenched, as if he could wrest answers from the night itself. The search was massive, unprecedented for a town of Crescent Bay's size. Divers plunged into the inky Pacific, their lights probing the ocean floor for any sign of the children. A sandal, a scrap of clothing, anything to anchor the nightmare to reality. None came. Search parties scoured the dunes, their boots sinking into the shifting sand, while others combed the nearby redwood groves, where shadows twisted into monstrous shapes. Helicopters from the California Highway Patrol swept low over the coastline, their rotors thumping like a heartbeat, their spotlights illuminating nothing but empty waves. The police set up roadblocks on Highway 1, stopping every car leaving Crescent Bay, their questions sharp and urgent. Have you seen 3 children? A tall man with fair hair? A blue sedan. Drivers shook their heads, their faces pale with the weight of the town's grief. Every lead felt like a lifeline, yet each one snapped, leaving the investigators grasping at air. Witness accounts, vivid yet maddeningly inconsistent, fueled the pursuit. Clara Hensley, the schoolteacher who'd seen the man on the beach, described his movements with a shiver-inducing clarity. The way his long fingers brushed Jane's shoulder, the way his sunglasses caught the sun, hiding eyes that seemed to burn with a secret hunger. Tommy Delgado, the teenage surfer, added a detail that sent a chill through Danny's spine. The man had glanced at his watch, a silver band glinting on his wrist, as if timing his departure. Rosa Martinez, the hot dog vendor, swore she saw him lead the children toward the boardwalk's edge, his canvas bag swinging with a weight that suggested something sinister within. A new witness, a bartender named Eddie Voss, came forward at midnight, claiming he'd seen a man matching the description at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar a mile from the beach, just hours before the disappearance. He was drinking alone, Eddie said, his voice low. But he kept looking out the window, like he was waiting for something or someone. The man had paid in cash, left a generous tip, and vanished into the afternoon heat, his presence as fleeting as a ghost's. The investigation's intensity surged with a tip that promised to break the case wide open. At 1 a.m. on July 5th, a trucker called the police hotline from a payphone in Bodega Bay, 30 miles north. He'd seen a blue sedan idling at a gas station, its driver a tall man with fair hair, his demeanor calm but his eyes darting nervously. In the back seat, the trucker glimpsed a small figure, a child, perhaps, slumped against the window. Danny and 2 other officers sped to the scene, their sirens screaming through the fog-shrouded highway, hearts pounding with the hope of finding the Sullivans alive. The gas station was deserted when they arrived, the attendant half asleep, confirming only that a blue sedan had stopped briefly, its driver buying a pack of cigarettes before peeling out toward San Francisco. A child's sandal, scuffed and pink, Anna's favorite color, lay discarded near the pump, its strap torn as if yanked in a struggle. The sight of it hit Danny like a fist, his breath catching as he bagged it as evidence, its small size a brutal reminder of the stakes. The sandal ignited a frenzy. The FBI, now involved, traced the sedan's description to a rental agency in San Francisco, where a man using the name, John Carver, had returned a blue Ford Falcon late that night. The name was a dead end, an alias, with no matching ID or address. The car, wiped clean of fingerprints, offered no clues, its trunk empty except for a faint smell of bleach that made the agent's stomachs turn. The trail went cold, but not before another lead sent the investigation spiraling into new territory. A motel clerk in Santa Cruz, 50 miles south, reported a man checking in just after midnight alone, his canvas bag clutched tightly. The clerk, a nervous woman named Lila Perry, described his voice as smooth, like velvet, but it made my skin crawl. He paid for one night, left before dawn, and the room was spotless, too spotless, as if scrubbed of any trace of his presence. A single blonde hair, long and fine, was found on the pillow, but DNA testing was decades away, and the clue was useless. The suspect's evasion was maddening, a masterclass in elusiveness that taunted the police at every turn. Chief Grayson, his face lined with sleepless nights, began to suspect the man was no stranger to Crescent Bay. Locals whispered of a drifter seen in town weeks before, lingering near the school playground, his fair hair catching the light as he watched children play. A hardware store owner recalled selling rope and duct tape to a man with a similar description, his smile disarming but his eyes cold. Each clue was a puzzle piece, but the picture refused to form. Was he a local, hiding behind a familiar face, or a transient killer, passing through like a storm, leaving devastation in his wake? The FBI drew parallels to other cases, the Iowa girls in '65, the Seattle siblings in '68, where a similar figure had slipped through the cracks, his charisma a weapon, his anonymity a shield. The drama reached its peak on July 7th, 3 days after the disappearance, when a fisherman found a child's beach ball, the same red one Jane had been tossing, washed ashore 10 miles north, near Point Reyes. The discovery sent the town into a frenzy, hope and horror colliding as search teams descended on the rocky coast. Divers braved the churning waters, volunteers scoured the cliffs, and Nancy Sullivan collapsed at the sight of the ball, its faded stripes a cruel echo of her children's laughter. The ball was confirmed as theirs, but no other trace was found, no bodies, no clothing, no answers. The lead, like so many before it, dissolved into the fog, leaving the police with nothing but a growing sense of futility. The man, whoever he was, had outmaneuvered them, his movements as precise as a dancer's, his motives as opaque as the ocean depths. As the search stretched into weeks, the intensity waned, replaced by a heavy, aching resignation. The command post was dismantled, the roadblocks lifted, and Crescent Bay's streets grew quiet, the posters of Jane, Anna, and Grant fading in the sun. Danny Walsh, haunted by the sandal and the faceless man in his sketches, refused to let go, spending nights poring over reports, chasing shadows that led nowhere. The suspect's evasion was complete, a vanishing act that left no fingerprints, no trail, only questions that gnawed at the soul. Had he planned every step, watching the Sullivans for weeks, choosing the chaos of July 4th to strike? Or was he an opportunist, a predator who saw 3 children and seized his moment? The resolution came not in capture or confession, but in the chilling silence of absence, a town left to mourn, a family broken, and a phantom who melted into the American landscape, leaving behind a mystery as deep and dark as the sea. The summer of 1966 faded into a cold, gray autumn in Crescent Bay, California, but the shadow of the Sullivan children's disappearance lingered like a bruise on the town's soul. Jane Sullivan, 9, Anna Sullivan, 7, and Grant Sullivan, 4, had vanished from Crescent Beach on July 4th, their laughter silenced, their faces immortalized on fading posters that fluttered in the coastal wind. The investigation, once a blaze of urgency, had sputtered into a smoldering frustration, its flames starved by a lack of solid leads and a suspect who seemed to dance just beyond reach, a tall, fair-haired phantom whose smile haunted witnesses' dreams. The Crescent Bay Police Department, led by the dogged officer Danny Walsh and Chief Harold Grayson, had chased every whisper, every shadow, only to find themselves ensnared in a web of unconfirmed theories and dead ends. As weeks turned to months, the case grew colder, but the mystery burned hotter, its allure as seductive as it was terrifying, drawing the town and a nation into a vortex of speculation, dread, and unanswered questions. The absence of a captured suspect was a wound that refused to heal. The man seen with the Sullivan children, described with chilling consistency by witnesses, was a chameleon of charisma, a lean figure with golden hair, a voice like warm honey, and eyes hidden behind sunglasses that seemed to conceal a predator's hunger. His movements on that fateful Independence Day were meticulous, almost choreographed, as if he'd rehearsed his escape in the mirror of his own twisted mind. The blue sedan, the canvas bag, the child's sandal left at a gas station. These fragments were all the police had, tantalizing clues that promised answers but delivered only silence. The FBI, now deeply invested, combed through their growing files on serial offenders, drawing parallels to cases that sent shivers down spines. The Iowa girls of 65, the Seattle siblings of 68, even whispers of a similar disappearance in Australia, where 3 children vanished from a beach under eerily familiar circumstances. Was this man a lone wolf, a drifter whose crimes spanned continents, or part of something darker, a network of shadows that preyed on innocence? The question hung heavy, a siren's call to those who dared to listen. Theories multiplied like ghosts in the fog, each one more tantalizing and unsettling than the last. One hypothesis, whispered in the smoky backrooms of the Rusty Anchor bar, painted the suspect as a local, a teacher, a shopkeeper, perhaps even a neighbor, who'd blended into Crescent Bay's fabric, his handsome face a mask for depravity. A retired detective, sipping whiskey at the bar, swore he'd seen a man matching the description years earlier, lingering near a schoolyard in Monterey, his gaze too intense, his smile too practiced. Another theory, favored by the FBI, suggested a transient killer, a nomad who drifted along the Pacific coast, striking when opportunity beckoned. The alias John Carver, used to rent the blue sedan, hinted at a man who'd done this before, his identity a patchwork of lies that unraveled under scrutiny. A third, more chilling theory emerged from a psychic consulted by a desperate Nancy Sullivan. The children were alive, hidden in a remote commune, spirited away by a cult that thrived in the lawless corners of the 60s counterculture. The idea was dismissed by police, but it lingered in the town's collective nightmares, a seductive possibility that kept hope alive, however faintly. The investigation's climax came in late September 1966, when a letter arrived at the Crescent Bay police station, its envelope unmarked, its contents scrawled in a jagged, deliberate hand. "You'll never find them," it read, the words slicing through the page like a blade. "They're mine now, dancing in the light where you can't follow." The letter was unsigned, its postmark smudged, but its tone was intimate, taunting, as if the writer savored the chaos he'd unleashed. Graphologists pored over the text, noting the confident loops and sharp angles, suggesting a man educated yet unhinged, his ego as vast as his cruelty. The police traced the paper to a common brand sold in every drugstore from San Francisco to San Diego, another dead end that fueled the case's maddening elusiveness. The letter sparked a renewed frenzy, with officers scouring motels, bus stations, and dive bars across the state, chasing a ghost who seemed to revel in their failure. Nancy and Jim Sullivan, their marriage fraying under the weight of grief, clung to the letter as a twisted lifeline, proof that someone knew something, even if that someone was a monster. The drama peaked on October 3rd, when a tip from a San Francisco transient sent police to an abandoned warehouse near the docks, its windows boarded, its air thick with decay. The caller claimed to have overheard a man bragging about taking kids from a beach. His voice slurred but chillingly specific. Officer Danny Walsh led the raid, his heart pounding as he kicked in the door, flashlight cutting through the gloom. Inside, they found signs of recent habitation, a mattress, a half-eaten sandwich, a newspaper dated July 5, 1966, with the Sullivans' faces on the front page. A single blonde hair, long and fine, lay curled on the floor, a cruel echo of the motel clue from months before. For a moment, hope surged, electric and intoxicating, as if the children might be huddled in a corner, waiting to be saved. But the warehouse was empty, its silence a scream of defeat. The hair, like the one before, was useless without DNA technology, and the trail went cold once more, leaving Danny to punch the wall in frustration, his knuckles bleeding as he cursed the man who'd outwitted them all. The resolution, if it could be called that, was no resolution at all. The Sullivan case remained open, a gaping wound in Crescent Bay's heart. No bodies were found, no suspect named, no confession verified. The letter, analyzed and reanalyzed, was deemed authentic by some, a hoax by others, its words a riddle that mocked every attempt at deciphering. Jim Sullivan retreated into silence, his days spent driving his taxi through empty streets, while Nancy haunted the beach, her eyes searching the horizon as if her children might walk out of the waves. The town, once a beacon of small-town charm, became a place of locked doors and whispered fears, its residents haunted by the possibility that the killer still walked among them. The FBI files grew thicker, cross-referencing the case with others across the country, but no arrest was made. No face matched the sketches that stared out from every corner of California. Yet the mystery of the Sullivan children refused to fade, its tendrils curling into the American psyche, as seductive and dangerous as the man who'd sparked it. Was he still out there, watching from the shadows, his canvas bag packed for the next strike? Did he know Jane's favorite book, Anna's Secret Dreams, Grant's love for chasing seagulls? The questions lingered, each one a hook that pulled readers deeper into the abyss. Some believed the children were gone forever, their fate sealed in a moment of unspeakable horror. Others held onto whispers of hope, that they were alive, hidden in plain sight, waiting for a truth that might one day surface. The case's open-ended nature was its own kind of torment, a story without an ending, a melody without a final note. And so, the Sullivan children's disappearance remains one of America's great unsolved mysteries, a tale that grips the heart and chills the soul. What happened to Jane, Anna, and Grant? Who was the man with the golden hair and the velvet voice, and where did he go? The answers, if they exist, are out there, buried in the sands of Crescent Beach or whispered in the shadows of a killer's mind. For those hungry for more, the story doesn't end here. There are clues yet to be uncovered, secrets waiting to be told. Stay tuned to this channel, where the next chapter of this haunting saga awaits, promising revelations that will keep you awake, wondering, and craving the truth that lies just beyond the horizon.